What's up, everybody? This is Elliott with artofmagic.com. Thank you so much for listening to Magical Thinking, this little podcast that I've been doing. You guys have been very kind, and you've emailed in at podcast@artofmagic.com, and you've let me know what you thought. And I'm really pleased to say that so far, most things have been overwhelmingly positive, and that makes me really happy. I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. If you want to email in, please do. Let me know what you think. My guest today is Gazzo. He is a huge legendary figure in the magic community, one of the most well-known buskers, street performers across the world. If you've seen anybody do the cups and balls, they probably have seen Gazzo do his, either on YouTube or actually lucky enough to see him do it on the street. We talk about some awesome stuff, including the shenanigans he's been up to in the United States, busking, of course. We talk about Walter Irving Scott and the second deal, and Gazzo is very opinionated, and he says some things that you and I may or may not agree with, and that's fine. I want to give a safe space to the guests that come onto the show so that they can be more open and honest and transparent so that you, as the listeners, and myself, can get to know them a little better as a person. Anyway, I just wanted to say that there might be some things that you and I may or not agree with, but he holds his convictions very strongly, which is fine. I think it's great. Like I said, this was an absolute dream come true. I hope you guys enjoy the episode. Of course, follow us on social media. You can find us on Instagram with @ASenseOfMystery as well as @TreasuryOfWonder. And you can find us on all the other socials with @ASenseOfMystery. Anyway, like I said, I hope you enjoy the show. Email me. Oh, I almost forgot. I also want to mention that we recorded about half the episode at the Magic Castle, and then we went to our usual recording spot afterwards. So there's a little bit of a weird break in the center, but it's okay, no big deal. We pick up right where we left off, and it shouldn't be a problem for you. Anyway, enjoy. Bye.
Jesus Christ. What a country. That's unbelievable.
I thought you'd enjoy that. Anyway, I'm ready to get started. We're already recording, so.
Yeah. Oh, we are?
Yeah.
All right.
Which is awesome. She'll never hear this.
I'm setting up as I go, so just if I might ask you to repeat the question, so.
That's fine. Yeah, no problem. It's not as much an interview as it is just a discussion, conversation.
Gotcha.
I just get to listen to you talk.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate enough to be able to sit here and listen to you anyway.
All right.
So yeah, would you please just kick it off with getting started, growing up in England, and then just immediately becoming fascinated with cards and scams and things like that.
Yeah. Growing up in England, well, I never really grew up in England. I've never really grown up. I'm still very childish.
Excellent.
So, but that fits, I suppose, because, I'm a very playful person, even in my normal life, I like to have, I think laughter is the best medicine. I love to have a laugh, I love it when people make me laugh. It's very rare today, but I do like a good laugh, I must admit. So I don't really want to grow up,
Okay, perfect.
I like
That's
keeping
awesome.
my childlike ways,
Yeah. So being a small boy then, maybe not growing up in England, but being a small boy in England.
A small boy in England.
Small boy.
Yeah.
Or girl, which...
I was a boy. Believe me, I was a boy. I know for a fact I was a boy. Growing up, I grew up in a place called Didcot, Oxfordshire.
Okay.
I grew up primarily in a blue-collar family, My dad was working all the time, my mum was working, and I had four brothers, and four sisters and a brother, so there was 6 of us, 8 with my mother and father.
Mm-hmm.
And I got interested in magic at a very early age. I don't know why some people some people grew up interested in juggling. They take to juggling. I never understood how people are fascinated with, juggling as a career. I took magic as a career. I was interested in watching people make things disappear, where the counterparts of my friends that I met later on in years in life they grew up interested in keeping balls in their hair. It's a big difference. I don't get it. Why? My sister used to have these 2 balls and hit them against the wall and play this game, and I took over and started doing it. But when I dropped the ball and it's like, tedious. I can't be bothered to pick it up and try it again. Who would ever want to keep doing this all day? You know, it was a knack that you had to adhere to, and it was just nothing fascinating for me. But to make something vanish, you know, and watching somebody do something on TV, producing something or making something vanish, I had an instant fascination for it. Don't know why. And I think that's a question for a lot of magicians. Why did you take to magic? You know, it's just a fascinating question. I don't know. But I have a theory that most magicians in life are short.
Okay.
And there are some, Harry Anderson and
Sure.
Dave Williamson and Steve Valentine, they're all tall. But there are magicians that mostly are short. And I think it's from insecurity.
Yeah,
You
what
know?
I was talking to somebody last night. I was like, "What trauma in your childhood made you want to be a magician?" It's that kind of like you're making up for some kind of shortcoming that you have yourself.
I guess, I don't know. But, you know, if you look at all the greats, the real serious greats of magic, they're all sort of like 5'6", 5'7", 5'8", you know?
Yeah.
But you do get the 6'2" performers.
Sure.
But yeah, most magicians, I think they're short and they're insecure and they use magic to for an icebreaker at parties. I don't know.
Yeah.
It wasn't me. I just had a fascination for it.
Sure.
Magic chose me. I didn't choose it. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't know why. I can't answer it. I haven't analysed it as much as I should. But I love it. It's a wonderful art to be in, and it's a big family.
Sure.
But that's one side. The other side is the street performers family as well.
Yeah.
You know, I suppose one rubs the other. I mean, I took to magic, was fascinated with it, and I wanted to become good at it, and so I took to street performing. Again, it chose me. I didn't choose it. I was told to street perform to become good at what I do.
Who told you to street perform?
Ken Brook. Ken Brook and a gentleman called Murray Walters. He was an escape artist. He had an Australian guy who travelled all over the world. Val Andrews wrote a book about him, and he had a magic shop in Blackpool that I would up on the train and jump the train and without paying and go up to Blackpool, which was like a 6-hour train ride from where I lived.
Okay.
You had to change trains, but back then you could sort of hop on trains and sit hide in between the seats, the luggage seats, and without having a ticket, you know. And sometimes you get caught, you get turfed off, but most of the time I got a free ride there and back. And I would go visit Murray, and he was an old man, a very old man, and he told me that there's a gentleman called Ken Brook who had a magic shop on Wardour Street, to go visit him and tell him I sent you. And then I remember Ken performing at a convention once, and I said, "You're the guy that had a holdout he used to make sponge balls disappear with a bike cable." You know, he'd come up with this. He tried to sell it, but it didn't sell very well. I'd like to have one now, actually, because it'd be a nice collector's item. And Ken Brook handwritten the notes to this bike cable. I can't remember if the bike cable was under the desk or in his other hand. I don't remember, but it was a bike cable that come out with a sticky, and it would make the sponge ball or coin disappear. And I remember telling him about that, and I said, "You also performed the trick with the egg bag, you know, a black bag, egg bag." And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "I'd like to get one of them." He said, "I don't have any more," but he said, "Take this one," and he gave me one out of his top pocket.
Wow.
And then a week later, apparently, the shop closed down after that, you know. It wasn't around no more, but then that's when I found out about Davenport's opposite the British Museum, and also another one was Southampton Row was the guy that just died, Alan Allen, who had a magic shop, which was a nice magic shop, and he had lots of jokes and etc. and gags in the window, and that was to encourage people to come in and ask questions, but he was kind of rude to people, which was kind of funny in its way.
Of course.
So, and that's how I got associated with the London scene, and then I realised London was a good place to move to, so I decided to move there when I was quite young, and to pursue street performing. I found out about Covent Garden and Camden Town, and that is my sort of royal road to the magic world, I suppose, and the entertaining world.
You were told that if you wanted chops to get out on the street.
Yeah, well, that's obvious, I think, in many cases, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I did start off. Murray actually told me to perform in pubs, Put a poster up, ask the proprietor if I could come in, say on a Wednesday night when it's slow. They wouldn't want you on a Saturday night when it's busy. Sure. Ironically, it's a bit silly, isn't it? It's back to front. You want to do it when there's a crowd, but they don't need you to do anything when they're selling beer.
Yeah.
They want you there when they're not selling beer.
Of course.
So, which worked in my favour, because when it was slow, I just put a poster up saying the magic show will be here at 8 o'clock on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and so I was surprised they showed up. I think I was like 16 or 17 back then, but back then you could actually drink beer in a pub at that age. Literally, you couldn't do it today. So you were allowed to go in there without an adult, and I went in to perform magic tricks, and I found out very quickly the tricks to perform and not to perform, the tricks that were engaging. But that wasn't enough, because the same people would show up the next Thursday. If it was successful, I'd put a poster up and we'd do it on a weekly event. But I found it was kind of the same people, so I had to have a wide range of tricks, of repertoire. Sure. And but that didn't work for me, because I didn't want to keep researching tricks to do. So and then I remembered Ken Brook and Murray telling me about busking, street performing. They actually told me that you can perform on a mini barrel. You get a barrow outside a pub, because I used to leave barrels when I was a kid outside a pub before they would deliver them down the chute. Okay. And you could stand out there, put a tabletop on the barrel, and because people couldn't put their beers on it because it was arched. So you could put a tabletop on that barrel and perform for lunchtime crowds, and I started doing that. And then I found out very quickly that what works, and I was amongst adults, and also my humour it developed very quickly. My gags and bits.
Yeah, I was about to ask, is that when the bits started coming?
Oh, they come overnight. Yeah, immediately. Yeah. But I grew up with my dad and my sisters always joking around and playing jokes, and I have a file of jokes in my head at any given moment. I can come up with a joke at any given set-up moment. I don't set up a joke like some of my guys that steal my jokes. They will set up a joke. They will ask somebody to let their cell phone ring so they could do a joke about that. It's like setting up a joke. I've never done that in my life. You deliver the joke when the time arises. You
let it be organic.
Yeah, but you have to have a file of jokes in your head. You can't sit there and think about it. It's too late. The pacing has to be instant. And that's kind of what my forte is. I'm sort of known for that, but that's because I'm experienced. Anybody can obtain it, but you have to remember what you've been doing and the joke you did to develop the laugh. Yeah. And then you file it in your head, and I can pull those files out at any moment.
Do you have jokes that you use all the time?
Yeah, most jokes that develop classic bits. At the beginning, I do a segment just purely to set up the crowd so they know which direction the show's going. Although I can be very engaging with my style, I encourage that, but I don't encourage heckling or wise-ass remarks. I don't like to encourage that, but I do encourage that because of my style. I like to avoid it. But I like to initiate right from the beginning the way it's going to go, with the way I perform, and the audience know that. But you get some people that are there with their girlfriend, and they're trying to show off to try and better me, and they ain't got a chance. Not a chance.
Not even a little.
Not a chance. I'm not being conceited, but they don't.
Yeah.
And but when they have a few drinks, they get courage in them.
Of course. Liquid courage.
Pint of courage, and, But that's all fine. It's all fun and games, isn't it? And I don't mean to offend any of my audience members. It's just that's the show I have, But I've toned down in the last 4 or 5 years dramatically, purely because I want to work.
So okay, I want to talk about this. Here in the States, over the last couple of years, we've been having this politically correct conversation.
I got a lot to say about that. It's wishy-washy. It's pathetic,
Yeah.
It's America's religious based, It really is.
Yeah,
well, in England, we don't really gear towards religion. We keep it to ourselves,
Sure.
Where in America they try to inflict it on other people, which is like, Religion, to me, religion is Christianity tried to control the devilry in us, right? But humans are evil people.
Sure.
But your job is to control that evilness in you by trying to do good and bad. And that's why people take to Christianity, okay? And so Christianity was designed to control the devilry in us. But first of all, you have to accept that you're an evil person. Once you accept that, then you can control it or try to control it. But if you go through life saying, I'm not evil, and I'm a do-gooder and I do good everywhere, that's
the definition of
it's a complete opposite. Because an animal was not capable of the devilry in a human, right? But an animal won't kill for the sake of it. A fox might, or something like that. But animals usually kill to survive, to eat,
out of necessity.
Where humans will shoot a deer for no apparent reason. They say it's for food and for the trophy, but it's purely for the adrenaline rush of shooting something. It's sad.
Yeah.
I could never do that. I can't even chop down a bloody tree or kick down a flower because it's wrong. It's not right. So that's I know straight away I'm capable of doing it,
sure.
But I have to control that. You see what I mean? I know that I'm capable of doing evil things, but I don't like to do evil things.
Because it's an unpleasant thing. You're hurting something else.
For me,
not
it
just
is.
Yourself.
For me, it is. Yeah, that's the feeling I get.
Yeah.
But some people, the guy that shot that lion, that dentist, what a complete fucking wanker that guy was.
Absolutely.
Don't edit that out.
No, I'm not going to. Fuck that guy.
What a fucking wanker that guy is.
Absolutely.
I hope that he gets a fucking cyst in the bottom of his spine. You know what I'm saying?
It's just the worst kind of
pain. To do
pain.
something like that, it's like people that kill gorillas, in Africa and stuff like it. It's just it's a weird world we're living in.
Yeah.
And let's get back to magic. Let's start cussing out some big magicians.
Well, so I don't know. That all just came about because I was interested in your.
Well, I'm very opinionated and I rattle on, don't I?
Well, yeah, but that's fine. I'm happy to have it.
Yeah.
Just the
and that Bill Malone, what a bastard he is. He works, doesn't he, that boy?
Oh, yeah.
He works more than anybody. And he's somebody you want dead, right? Because that way we can get work.
Leave some for the rest of us, Bill.
He's the best there is, isn't he?
Oh, yeah,
he really is.
He's an all-star.
And he's the nicest guy in the world.
Very nice. I had the pleasure of being introduced to him by Steve Reynolds.
Oh, right.
In New Orleans, yeah.
He's a guy that frequents a lot of the conventions, but wouldn't you really like to see him in his own environment?
Oh, I love it.
He plays around at conventions, but live in late audience, he's unbelievable. He's a different kettle of fish. He's on a different level from everybody. Mm-hmm. There's a few of them out there that I really admire. Juan Tamarez is another one, purely for his old magical career, worked for lay people. Mm-hmm. It's just great. There's a lot of great stuff in magic. I'm really proud to be associated with this industry. I really am.
Well, I think many of us would consider you one of the greats up there with Tamras and Malone, as far as.
Not really. No, I wouldn't suggest that.
Maybe not technically for Malone or creatively for Tamras, but you've done more shows than anybody in the world.
I have.
You know your shit.
I do.
You have the best experience, some of the most amazing things to say, and I certainly put you up there with those guys.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
There's other names that I would love to mention, but
please do. Yeah.
Like Dick Williamson, he's another one that's got chops.
He's got chops. Very funny.
When I just did a big lecture tour and I was talking about certain greats, like Albert Goshman. Mm-hmm. Albert Goshman throughout his career performed the same routine, basically. Yeah. It varied a lot, but I'm sure if you saw Albert Goshman work at one convention, then 3 months later you see him at another convention, and 3 years later you see him at another convention, and 2 decades later at another convention, each show would kind of be similar. Mm-hmm. The pacing might be different. But what I tried to explain to people is Albert Goshman performed those same routines for his entire career. And that is why he became a tight performer. And that is why people flocked to see him, because they know it was going to be consistently good. And where today, you get people that are performing the latest trick they buy from the internet. Maybe it be cartoon because the guy won on England's Got Talent with cartoon, and then all of a sudden everyone's trying to buy that routine and think they can come up with the same response, but it doesn't work like that, you know. So flavor of the week tricks are not what I'm all about.
Sure.
I try to encourage people to perform the same 3 tricks for 30 years instead of 30 tricks every 3 months, because that's the difference, you know. You keep buying a drawer full of stuff, you know, and the classics are out there, like the egg bag. I'm on a campaign not to call it the egg bag, because why would you come out and say to the audience, would you like to see my colour changing deck routine? You know? So you don't call it the egg bag, do you? You call it the black bag, or the fabric bag, or the little black bag. So that's what I call it, you know. That's a classic in itself. But who talked about these tricks was Roy Benson, Tom Mullica, Johnny Thompson, Charlie Miller. They all talked about this fantastic routine. You know, Ken Brook talked about it. Bruce Elliott, Dr. Elliott, you know, they all talked about this fantastic apparatus, you know. And I read all the anecdotes and notes of all the greats talking about this. But let's talk about the people that said it wasn't a great trick. It was Vernon, Larry Jennings, Bruce Savant. They all talked about the egg bag. It was crap. They don't understand it. Marlowe was another hater of it. He just didn't get it. But let's think about who the greats were that
these
talked
aren't
about
guys
it.
performing for lay people.
These are guys that you go to see at a convention. Vernon was the type of guy that was jealous in many ways about, he would ask, I can come to your convention, but who's on the bill? They say Slidini. Vernon would turn around and say, not this time, because he didn't want to be in the same convention as Slidini, because people would flock to see Slidini. Although Vernon had a room full of people, but it was cardmen, heavy hitter cardmen. But Slidini's magic worked for lay people and magicians. Albert Goshman worked for lay people and magicians. You see what I mean? That's the difference. But they would understand the egg bag because they're performers, where Vernon would never understand the egg bag, and he didn't understand it because he was never really a performer of lay people. But he performed his magic at conventions. But if you ever choose to perform Vernon's routines in front of lay people, it does not carry the same weight as you do in Sponge Balls or Sponge Bunnies, believe it or not, or Miser's Dream, or Chinese Sticks, or Salt Pour, or the egg bag, black bag, or for that reason, because the audience understand those less is more tricks, where you're doing like counting tricks and reds and blacks and oil and waters and ace assemblies. It's pathetic. I learned very quickly at my young age, going back to when I performed in the pubs, that those tricks don't work. They're not engaging. They watch you and they tap you on the shoulder as a great trick, mate. What they want to say, what the fuck was that? You bring your Aikido box out, the crowd's going to turn on you, But you bring the black bag out, it's like, wow, what's going on here? You see what I mean? That's the difference. But people purchase the egg bag, the black bag, early in their career because they read about it and they say, I've got to get this trick, and it's $20. They get it and they go, what the hell is this? And they come and perform it with that wooden egg they give you, and you're like, oh, this is not working, it's terrible. So why would all these greats say it was great? Why would they? So you go back to, you get your Aikido box out and you bring that to the restaurant, you perform it to your mates, and it's like, you got the Chinese coin you put in the purse, and then the silver coin changes with the English penny, and the English penny is now changed with the Chinese coin, and in my pocket is the silver dollar. I bring the silver dollar out, it's double-headed. And you go, what the hell's going on here? It's like a puzzle. It's not magic. But they think there's more to the Aikido box than there is the black bag. Because there has to be, because it turns and it looks the same as his lid's on, and there's a Boston box, and it goes like on and on. It's like crap. It's the worst trick in the world, and it costs you $100 for that. The black bag is $20. That's the difference. But you don't find these things out unless you perform in front of lay people over and over again. That's what I've been finding out very quickly.
Do you think that it's possible to take let's say the Akita box, the worst trick in the world, and elevate it into something that is entertaining?
I'm sure some performers could do that, like maybe David Williamson could do something like that, but he would have to bring about a funny situation with it.
Sure.
But me personally, I couldn't be arsed with it. It's not me. That's
the
not
trick
my...
isn't inherently good. It has to be made
it has
good.
to be like Ramsey's cylinder and coins. It's not a trick that to me is an engaging trick for the audience. It's for a convention trick. When you go to a convention, that's the type of tricks you want to see, because they say it's the most difficult trick to perform, cylinder and coins. Everyone said in the 30s and 40s the cups and balls is the most difficult trick to perform, but I've changed that. I've allowed even a novice to come out and perform the cups and balls and make it engaging, because I released it. You see what I mean? I've changed the principle of that, of the stigma wrapped around the cups and balls. I've changed that. Because I know that although it is still the greatest trick in the world, it has to, every trick has to be engaging, has to be understood from the audience. It can't have those hurdles of too many segments in the routine. It has to basically cut to the chase. But I do. But even though I do a couple ball routine, it's really 5 or 6 minutes of the early segments, beginning, middle, and end. But with the jokes and the bits and pieces, it ends up to be sometimes 40 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
But that's what tricks are all about: is to make it engaging and funny and entertaining for the audience to watch.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those guys that can perform for lay people and magicians, you see, at a convention, I'm really sought after of a lot of conventions. I choose not to do a lot of conventions because purposely they don't pay enough. And secondly is I don't enjoy performing for magicians, but I can.
Sure.
I can get them laughing, but my forte is lay people. I have a lot of respect for lay people. I couldn't give a toss about magicians,
Of course. I saw your show a couple nights ago, and it was pretty. It was honestly, it was surreal for me because, even though you're not doing your street show, you're doing a new set. There are lines I'd heard from watching you perform on the street on YouTube and things like that.
Yeah.
And it was an honor, is what I'm trying to say, to see it in person and to hear it. And that goes back to you saying you have that bank of jokes that you can pull from. That
file of jokes, I pull them out at any moment, and I tend to do that, and that's what makes my show the way it is, and that's what, like you say, I've worked hard to get where I am. It hasn't come overnight,
Of course.
So I insist on respect, really.
Absolutely.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I've gone through the trenches, I've got my badge of merit or my badge of courage or whatever you call it. I've earned my bravery award,
Yeah.
By storming the trenches and getting in there.
Absolutely.
Getting my fingers dirty.
Yeah.
But you see, when I first started my show, there was before internet, before cell phones, before sound systems. My reputation evolved through purely attrition of my show. People spoke about my show. You got to see this guy. You got to see this guy. So word got about where you don't need to have a show today. You just need the internet, and you just need to plug yourself on the internet about how good you are. And and that's what people are doing. But they don't really understand that at the end of the day, no matter how bullshitty they get on the internet, you've got to have a show. Because one day you're going to be in front of the people that you've been talking to about yourself about. You say, okay, I do this and I'm great, and you get other people to tell you how good they are, and all of a sudden you go, right, you're up. You say, boy, that guy, he fell on his face, so it will bite you in the ass at the end. Yeah. You see, where I never talked about myself on the internet, other people did. Yeah. When the internet was available. But before the internet, it was my show spoke for itself.
You built your foundation.
Yes, before the internet.
Yeah. And that's, I coming from a time of the internet and being a magician who learned primarily from the internet. Yeah. Got all his books through the internet, bought them online, that sort of thing. And, I was lucky that when I started, I just had the predisposition to kind of do what you're saying to do, which is get your shit together, know your stuff, be good before you say you are. It's better to keep your mouth shut and people think you're a fool than to open your mouth and
keep your ears and your eyes open, your mouth shut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
choose your battles.
Yeah. And you know, performed thousands, hundreds of thousands of shows.
Probably hundreds of thousands, yeah.
That's incredible.
Probably, yeah. I think I've done more shows than anybody in the world. I mean, I don't know if that's correct, but I think I have.
Yeah.
You know, especially lately, my new show is developed into a quick, choppy show, and I bought a sack full of oranges. I perform carte orange, as you know.
Yes.
So I count the oranges at the end of the day, and by 20, I had 22 oranges in a bag.
Wow.
I bought 22. 2 were gangrenous, who was like too soft to perform with.
Sure.
So I ended up doing 20 shows. When I went to reach into the bag to get the second from last orange, it was gangrenous. It was too pussy, and I couldn't perform with it.
Sure.
So I had to pack up. But I was ready to do 2 or 3 more shows, but I ran out of oranges. So I did 20 shows in that day.
Wow.
So I'm capable of doing 20 shows easily a day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and some days I do that.
Yeah.
You know.
That's amazing. And you're just where are you performing normally? Are you still street performing?
I do busk. I have a lot of passion for it. I love to perform. I have to perform for money because I need to pay my bills.
Of course.
But if I was wealthy and independently rich, I would do it for free.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't afford to do that.
Sure.
So I demand payment. You know, I insist upon it.
Of course.
Purely so I can carry on doing what I love to do, and that's performing. And there's not a lot. I don't get a lot of gigs. You know, I turn down gigs because purely I don't want to do gigs.
Mm-hmm.
If it was on the other hand, I was performing more gigs than I was able to street perform, then I would go into that market. But I really don't get a lot of gigs because, you know, people obviously work cheaper, or they consider that they're better, or what. I don't know the answer. I don't get a lot of gigs, maybe because of my style of working. They're worried that I might offend somebody or something like that. I don't know.
Sure.
So I know that my market is still street performing because I love to work.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where I still work. Yeah, I still busk on the streets. Busking is the adopted term, correct pronunciation as a street performer.
Sure.
It's the adopted term. Busking has gone worldwide now.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I still busk, but I'm mostly getting booked in. Is payment-wise is mostly outdoor festivals in Europe and in England.
How many of those do you do a year? Just out of curiosity.
10 or 15.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Big festivals, you know. I go to Canada every year, and when I'm not working, then I'm street performing, you know. But I do get gigs, you know. I get a private party, do an engagement, a club or a gig or a corporate event. I do get them, but I don't look for them. They call me and I put a price in, and they agree, then I go to do that gig.
Sure.
But I don't care if I work for those people or not anyway.
Yeah.
You know, I like street performing. I still have passion for it. You know, I've been performing my whole life, so, you know, really 3 decades now. So I'm ready to do another 2 at least.
What's your... You learned at a young age what tricks worked.
Yes, I did.
What does that mean? What's the goal that you have for your spectators, for your audience? What do you want them to feel or to experience?
Well, you know, that's a difficult question to answer because I don't know what they're feeling, but I know that what they're witnessing is something unique, and it's completely baffling what I do. You know, it's completely baffling watching it for the first time. A lot of performers have said, you know, if they come back 3 or 4 times, they could kind of figure it out, but they won't be able to figure it exactly out because there's a lot of pocket management going on and time into the bits. But the first layperson coming into seeing it is completely baffling. I think I'd like to give the same effect I had on watching Albert Goshman or Slidini work, you know? Mm-hmm. You see what I mean? Or Ken Brook. Sure. I was completely baffled and entertained.
Yeah.
And I hope that they're getting the same feeling about me when I perform. And, you know, and I'll be entirely satisfied if they are
Yeah.
getting that feeling, you know.
Yeah.
But who knows? I don't.
Is so being baffled and being entertained, is that a 50-50 split? Not that being baffled isn't also being entertained at the same time, but I mean, just joke-wise and then magic-wise, which of those?
Well, personally, I like watching pure magic.
Mm-hmm.
I like watching George Soterio, who's a silent act on stage. I like watching his style; it's fantastic. I like watching Lance Burton perform. I like watching these guys; they're silent, and I love watching Cardini. They didn't say anything, but that's pure magic. But I also like the other one, Sid Lorraine, who was funny when he performed. He did gags and bits. He was silent, but he was funny. I'd rather have the clown aspects involved in it commercially because it's more engaging. Although magic does sell when you're at a certain level. Cardini performed, and his magic spoke for itself. You know,
Sure.
He didn't have to advertise his magic. People talked about him. You got to see Cardini go. And when they would go into the theatre and see him perform, they knew they were watching a master of his art. I enjoyed that style, but I purposely enjoyed the clowning side of it. You know, the slapstick. Not so Chaplin style, but you know, we're doing magic. Who can I say that was great? The guy that just died recently. Carl Ballantyne.
Okay, Ballantyne.
Yeah, although he spoke, but he had spoofs. He was fantastic, wasn't he? He was one of my heroes. You know, I never told him that because I didn't really get to know him much, but he was one of my heroes. Tom Mullica's another one who's a comedy, you know, and I think that sounds better than somebody that's so serious.
Sure.
You know, so I tend to enjoy more the clowning aspect of magic, you know. Yeah, I'm a big fan of it. See, the thing is with magic, you don't have to be good at magic. What I'm saying is, hear me out. What I'm saying is, you can go on stage after about 3 months of practicing in your bedroom, come on stage, and you'll get a slight mediocre applaud. Yeah. You did a dye tube or whatever, or silk vanish with the thumb tip.
Yeah.
And they applaud you.
Yeah.
Right? But with juggling, you can't come out after a month and try and entertain the audience because you're going to drop.
Yeah.
You have to put your homework in. You have to practice.
Yeah.
Because if you drop, the crowd's going to boo you. You know,
you didn't do what you said you were going to do.
Yeah, you have to practice juggling. You have to get up there. So you practice for months and months and months, years, before you can go on stage. With magic, after a couple of months, you bought a trick, a die box, and you make something disappear with a self-working trick, and they applaud you. And that's the epitome of this art, you know. There's a lot of bad performers, you know. And I'll mention some of them's names if you want to edit them out.
If you want to mention them, and I won't edit them out, you can.
That's I'm not going to do that. But you know what I'm saying?
I absolutely know.
There's a lot of bad performers in this industry.
Yeah. It's also just kind of the public perception, which we can get to Penn and Teller and the way that they've influenced public perception of magic.
Oh, they're fantastic, those two. Come on.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
but it's you know, I think that the public at large believes that all magic is sleight of hand to some degree. So even if you are using a self-working trick, they're going to applaud you because of a perceived skill that you have.
I don't know about that. I don't know if that's the case. I just, I think the public really have literally no idea about magic. They're completely in the dark about it. You know, they have no idea how anything is done. They have a theory.
Sure. You know? Yeah.
But they've no idea.
Yeah, that's all I mean is that their theory is that, you know, the guy came out and he did something impossible. He must be worth something as a magician. Even though when we look at it, and even the spectator maybe says it wasn't very pretty, or it wasn't good, or, you know, it wasn't something I haven't seen before, he still did the impossible thing.
He did the impossible, yeah. And he gets accolades for it. Yeah. But you know, and that's the thing is with this fraternity, the magic fraternity, they like to give everybody a chance, but they should have some level here because there's some really bad performers in this fraternity, the Magic Castle. Yeah, it's got better because they're paying people. Yeah, you know, where the pros would never come because they couldn't afford to come. You know, where I would give up 20 years ago a week of my work and a wage just purely to come here because I thoroughly love the atmosphere here. I really do. I'm a massive fan of it. But it took a lot out of me as far as traveling, wage, expenses. But today they give you a wage, they put you in a hotel, and they give you food.
Yeah.
It's a no-win situation. I mean, it's a win-win situation.
Sure.
But 20 years ago, you had to do it for the love of it, and I purely did it for the love of it. You know, and I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did come here for what they offered me. You know, but now people can think about what they want to do. If they really want to come here, they go, well, it's not breaking me.
Yeah.
You know, I'll break even probably. But it's a place where everyone should come and perform. Yeah. I think. Everyone in the know. Yeah. You know, it's a great place. I'm a huge fan of this place. And Jack Goldfinger, I mean, what a great job he's done. There's been a lot of bookers, but this guy is the best so far for me. Although you can never reach him. I reached him because I put on there Busty Sandra on a Skype, and he picked up. That's how I got hold of him. He answered my call.
That's funny. Oh man, that's great. I want to talk a little bit about. So, your first sort of introduction was the Eddie Maguire manuscript.
When I was 9 years old, my grandfather went to. He used to go to the races, and I always assumed he went to London when I was young to bet on the horses, and he was nowhere near London. But I asked him if when next time you go to the races, can you pick me up a book? So my grandfather went to Davenport, which is opposite the British Museum. He got wind of a magic shop opposite there, so he went there. And they had sold him a book that had come in circulation that was a book of the week that week, and it was Phantoms at the Card Table. So he purchased that little pamphlet and sent that back to me. And it's not a book you give a 9-year-old boy.
No, it's not.
I couldn't read it, didn't understand it. So my sister would read me bits from it when I was young, and they told me some of the quotes and anecdotes at the end of the book. And I just fascinated with this gentleman, Walter Irving Scott. Yeah. You know, and he was part of my life. You know, I grew up with him in my head for all of my life. You know. Yeah. And I vowed to meet the guy one day. You know, although a lot of people said he didn't exist. It was a fragment of Eddie Maguire's imagination. He come up with this apparition to get into the association with Vernon and his group. So he sort of stirred the pot, as they say, just so he could be associated and get involved with Vernon Miller and that group of card men in that era, in 1929, 1935 type era. And but I kind of didn't believe that. I didn't believe that somebody could come up with that imagination, you know, like a fragment of someone's imagination. I really believed in the character, Walter Irving Scott. I believed it. So, and I vowed to say, I'm going to go find him one day, and I did. Yeah. You know, my next quest is to discover Erdnase, people. I got some really interesting stuff. I found a trunk. People found a big trunk of photographs and books and notes, and it could be associated with Erdnase. Stand fast, Bill Kalush. Stand fast, Chris Kenner. Highest bidder.
Oh, okay. Well, so this leads into the fascination with scams as a young man.
Yeah, well, I didn't really. I was never a scam artist, but I did is.
Did you run with the Monty team?
I did run with them for about 2 years, yeah, and I disassociated myself with them because they were purely thieves. They were just thieves, and it's not how I wanted to go through life, stealing and thieving. You know, it's just not me. Sure. So I left that group, but I was a fledgling in that, growing up in that group, you know, and so then I decided to move on, and that is when I found out about street performing and performing in pubs and performing. But what I learnt from that group was crowd control and how they organised the crowd and how it shaped and shifted, and I found it fascinating, and I put all that into my street performing skills, which is irrelevant today. And so I ended up becoming I suppose, a world-class street entertainer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because of it.
Yeah, because of it. Yeah.
So being obsessed with Walter Irving Scott, I keep using the word obsessed. Maybe that's
I was
appropriate.
obsessed. No, it was
Okay.
obsession. Yeah, why
Okay.
not?
All right.
Rightly so.
So obsessed with Walter Irving Scott, and you were just really driven to meet him. What does that fire feel like? That passion to go and leave your country to go to a new place and.
Well, there's kind of a misconception there. I didn't really go to America to find
sure.
him.
No.
I said if I'm ever able to locate him, I would go and knock on his door type thing. That was what it was.
Okay.
But I went purely, I left England because back when in 1975 to 1985, street performing was illegal in England. You couldn't do it anywhere except Covent Garden and Camden Town. But they were shutting down Camden Town when I was there about 1979. They shut down Camden Town, meaning that you couldn't perform there anymore. So that is when I went to Covent Garden, but you line up to do one show, and I was doing 5 or 6 shows at Camden Town on a Saturday afternoon. And a Sunday, I was doing a lot of shows, but when I went to Covent Garden, you could only do one show, and that didn't fit my realm. So I went to Leicester Square, and the cops would shut me down. You couldn't do it anywhere. I got really frustrated. That is when I met a street entertainer called Artist. He was a spoon player, and he used to do Cat's Cradle and tell poems, and he used to put a little mat down. He was like a hippie performer, and he would perform bare feet, and I found it fascinating, his style. And so I friended him and asked him about where could I go, and he told me to go to Key West, Florida, if I ever get to the States. And he also told me to meet one of his friends if you ever get to New York. Call this guy, and his name was Gregory Fleeman. And so that is what I did. I went to America, phoned up Gregory Fleeman. That's a story in itself. That's a fascinating story.
Well, yeah, I think we have a little bit of time if you want to tell the story.
Yeah, I'll tell the story. So I got frustrated with England, and I decided to take up Artist, the spoon player. He was from Seattle, his offer, and he was actually over there filming the Poor Daniel show with Tom Noddy. And that is when I went to Covent Garden. I saw Tom Noddy. It was windy, so he told everybody to come in under the pillars of the Covent Garden. He said, everybody come in, and get close. And I'm like, I can't be dealing with this hippie shit. So I left. But it was Tom Noddy, one of the greatest performers in the world ever on the history of performing. He's a bubble guy. Look him up. He's unbelievable. But I walked away from him that day. Then I saw him on the Poor Daniel's Magic Show, and I'm like, oh my God, that's the guy I walked away from. Thought he was an aging hippie stuck in the 60s. Unbelievable. He was unbelievable. So that's when I went, about that time, to America.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a lot of money. I sold everything that I had, that I owned, all my magic books and my furniture, and left my place in Fairhazel Gardens in Swiss Cottage, where I lived. And went to America with about $100 in my pocket, and all I had was a piece of paper saying Gregory Fleeman I was to call him. But I ended up getting to America, and I didn't know anybody. It was before cell phones, before GPSs, before the internet, and I'm stood there. I got off the plane, and they wouldn't let me through immigration I was there for about 4 or 5 hours, maybe. It could have been longer. I don't remember. But it was really frustrating because I had sold everything. I told everybody I'm going to America, and immigration would not let me in. They didn't believe my story. And they said, who are you going to stay with? Because, see, the thing is, if you're going to go on holiday, right, you don't wing it. You get a hotel, you get a hostel name. You could do all these things if you're really going on a holiday.
Yeah.
But I wasn't going on a holiday. I was going over there to live. So I didn't think about all these things. So when I think about it now, if I was really going to America for a break, for a holiday, I would have who I'm going to stay with, how am I going to get around, all these things.
Sure.
But I did have some greyhound. My friend Mark Russell, who had a travelling agency in England, sold me some greyhound bus tickets to get around America. I had like 15 or 20 greyhound bus tickets that were like $200 for all these 20 tickets, and I could travel on any bus anywhere I wanted to go. So I had those, which was good, but they didn't believe my story because they say, "Where you staying? Where you going now?" And I said, "Well, I'm off to Florida." And they go, "Where are you going to go when you go to Florida?" I go, "Well, I'm going to go to Coconut Grove, then I'm going to go to Key West, Florida." They, "Who are you staying with?" "Well, I got this, and my story's choppy. They didn't believe it, so they said, "We can't let you in." I'm like heartbroken because I just left England.
Yeah.
And then I had Gregory Fleeman's number, and I said, "Well, this is a guy that I can stay with here." And they said, "If we call him up now, would he be able to vouch for that?" And I said, "Well, he doesn't know I'm going to call. It's a friend of a friend." They said, "Well, how will he know that you? How do you know you can stay there?" I said, "He may not. Then I have to go to Florida tonight. Get on the bus." They said, "You're not going anywhere. You're going back on a flight to England." I'm like, "Come on." And finally, after about 2 hours, they finally let me in. They believed my story, and I had a letter saying from a drainage company. I was doing weekend work of putting cameras down drains, to find the faults in drains, and that was I was considered a drain technician, and I had a letter from them saying that good luck on your 3-week holiday in the States. Your job will be secure when you get back. They found that letter and said, "Okay, we believe you." Yeah. And that was like, oh my God, they found that letter. That was good. I forgot I had it. But the owners of that drain company was CAD, Clear All Drains, a gentleman called Bradley Rayner, and he told me that they go to America a lot to skydive, and immigration will be tight to get in. So you need to have this letter from us, and I had it in one of my shirt pockets, and they found that, and boy, he was a good guy. He saved my ass. Bradley Rayner. His brother was Terry Rayner. There's like 4 or 5 brothers that had this big drainage company in London I worked for.
Yeah.
And I give my notice in, and they told me, "Good luck in your career in America, and you'll love it. It's a great country. You do well, and take this letter just in case you get stuck." And that's what carried it. So I got through immigration, and I'm stood in Times Square, in Penn Station, and I didn't know anybody. I had my 2 suitcases. I had a street performing table where the legs had been folded up in the bottom of the table, in the bottom of the suitcase. So I had folding legs so it could fit in a suitcase. And if they would have searched that, they would have found that, and then I wouldn't have had a story for that, But they didn't find all. They didn't search my luggage. I got through, frustrated, and it's like 7 o'clock at night, and it's raining, it's cold, it's November. I remember it. And I didn't know nothing about America. I expected America to be sunny, and it's like California movies, When you see a movie from California, that's what you think America's like growing up in England. But that's California. In New York, it's like English weather. It's freezing, it's snowing, it's November. And I'm just going, where's the warmth? Where's the sun, Anyway, so I asked a policeman, and apparently a cop had just been murdered in that area, and there was an abundance of cops from all the precincts have been rallying around trying to figure out what's going on. The cop had been killed or murdered, and the cops didn't have time for anything. So I asked this cop, and it was like, he was about 6'2", and it was massive, big cop, big massive, 300-pound cop. And I said, "Excuse me, sir, where can I stay for the night?" He said, "YMCA down there." So I go to the YMCA, and I get a taxi there. I didn't have a lot of money, so I get a taxi to the YMCA, and it was like $28 for the night, but it was my own room. I didn't want to share because I heard about America being there's a lot of thieves and you have to protect your stuff. So I got my own room, and it ended up being about $48. It took nearly half my money, whatever. So I get into the YMCA, I shut the door, and I lay down on the bed, and I'm sort of jet lagged, but I think I got to go call Gregory Fleeman. So I get off the bed. I didn't go in the bed, I just lay on the bed, so the bed's like, the sheets are ruffled, white sheets. So I go downstairs, and there's a bar across the way, and it's like 10 o'clock at night. So I go to this bar, and I don't know how to use the phones. I understand you need cord. It was before calling cards. It was all intimidating because nobody shows you how to work anything, Sure. So I didn't have any American currency. So I told the bar lady, the story of why I'm coming to America. I'm going to go to Florida, Key West, and street perform. And I said, "But I have this number. I don't know how the phones work." So she says, give me the number, I'll phone it for you. She went down to the end of the bar, she pulled out a white phone, brought it was about 30 feet of
cord,
you know. She brings it up, and I've never seen such a long cord, and I'm just laughing hysterically. It's unbelievable, it's massive, really long cord. So I go like that, and she dials the number, and it's Gregory Fleeman. He goes, hello. I said, hi, is this Gregory? He goes, yeah, who's calling? And I said, this is a friend of a friend. I said, artist. I said, artist, he owes me money. Where is that bastard? I'm like, oh my God, you know, what's your story? I said, well, he'd give me your phone number and I'm looking for somewhere to stay if you could show me around. He goes, I'm busy right now. I'm in the middle of writing a screenplay. I ain't got time for this. And he put the phone down on me, and I'm like, but he said, where are you staying? What's going on? I said, I'm staying at the YMCA, and he told me, an artist told me to give you your call. He said, I'm with my partner. I ain't got time for it. I'll give you a call tomorrow. I said, I don't have a phone. He goes, well, I'll call me in the morning. Bye. And put the phone down. That's how it was. So she goes, that didn't go well. I said, no. I said, so I had a beer. Yeah. And it was it was like a boxing pub. And they had like photographs of all Italian boxers. Yeah. And it was good in there. So I stayed in there for another hour or so. And it was like kind of midnight. And I go back to the YMCA, and I'm jet lagged, and I go to sleep. Then there's a knock at the door. Like that, and I think, who the hell knows me that I'm here? You know, I'm paranoid. I open the door and I look down. There's just a passageway of nothing. No one in the corridor. Just the elevators down there, and the exit sign down there. And I'm like, what's weird? I shut the door, and I look down. There's a piece of paper saying somebody wants to speak to you down in the office, downstairs in the lobby. And I'm thinking, fucking immigration have found me. I'm fucked, right? Yeah. So I lock the door, right, and I go down really nervously. I don't want to go back to England at this stage. So I go down, and there's this big guy, and he puts his hand out, shakes my hand. He says, Gazzo? I said, yeah. He goes, Gregory Fleeman. I go, oh, it was like a little angel now. I didn't know anybody, and he says, look, sorry for being shirty. He said, you know, I'm with my partner. He had come all the way from New Jersey, and we're writing a screenplay, and we're submitting it tomorrow to California. But my partner had talked me into coming to get you because, like, he said, how would you like it if you didn't know anybody in England? And, you know, go get the guy, you know. It's like, well, Greg, you know, this can wait, go get him. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm sorry if I was abrupt. Said, no problem. He says, well, get your money back for the room. And I go, what? I just laid on the bed. He said, that's all right. Give him his money back. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, how does this work in America? Get my money back? I've been in the room. So he comes out and he gives me my $48 or whatever it costs. I can't remember. Yeah. And so now I've got my $48 and I'm happy, and I'm going to go and stay with Gregory for a few days. You know, he sorted me out. Yeah. He said, I'm just living in Soho area in Manhattan. And he said, we'd get a taxi. And Greg, it was raining. He puts his umbrella up, and the taxi's got a light on, and he comes past, it doesn't stop, so Gregory smacks his fucking umbrella on the top of the cab. And I'm like, oh my God, this is America. This is what I hear about, aggressive Americans, you know. And the cab driver screeches his brakes. He's an Asian guy, and he opens the boot and he gets a tire iron. And he comes up, and there's Gregory with the umbrella like this, and the guy with the tire iron, they're squaring up with each other. And I'm like, I got my suitcases like this, going fucking in the rain, it's pissing with rain, and they're squaring up. And Gregory's going, you should fucking stop. By law, you should stop. Your light was on. I flagged you down. And the guy goes, you hit the top of my umbrella. And I'm going, look, guys, just come on. I'm from England. I don't need this shit. So we get in the cab, and they apologise to each other, and they get to Gregory's house, and we go up to his like 44th story building, and I meet his partner. And then Gregory is telling me about this screen they're writing for this movie. And I'm jet lagged, so he's telling me this story about the mafia are chasing this guy, and they shoot the gun, and he's got a blood bag here, shoots it, and the blood comes out, and then they realise it's real blood, and they say, wait a minute, someone's put real bullets in the gun. And he's telling me this story, and I'm like going, yeah. And I'm trying to stay awake, you know, I don't want to be rude, but I'm jet lagged, and it's like really late for me. So then I start falling asleep, and I fall asleep on his couch, but I somehow sort of remember the story he told me. And then I end up going to Key West after staying with Gregory for a week, and it was great host, great time. We went to all this, because he used to be a street entertainer playing guitar, but he wrote screenplays, and that was his other living. And then I get to Key West, and it's really hot. I'm going to cut this short short because we got to open up the room for the thing. That's okay. But we get to Key West, And my friend says when we're in Key West, when it's really hot, we go because it's really piping hot there, you know. And we get into Key West, and I befriend a friend. One of my best friends even today is Bertie McLean. Richard Parrott, his name is. He's a Ringling Brothers clown, and we performed on the pier. And he said at night we go drinking and have a good time, you know, meet women and blah blah blah. But in the day when it's really hot, we go to movies. You want to go to a movie? There's a movie playing. So I'm in the movies watching the movie, and I tell my friend what's going to go on in the movie, and he said, "How the fuck do you know that? It's just released." I said, "I don't know. I know the movie." He goes, "How?" I said, "I don't know." And at the end of the movie, it was written by Gregory Fleeman.
Oh wow!
And the movie was with Brian Dennehy, and it was called FX.
Wow.
The movie, Brian Dennehy.
Yeah.
I was in the guy's apartment when they released that movie to California.
That's amazing.
Warner Brothers, I think, bought the script, and that's how it came about. So that's the story of Gregory Fleeman.
Finished the story about seeing the movie.
Yeah. Actually, she hasn't done my makeup yet. Let me get my makeup finished, then we can carry on. Okay. So they do it in LA. They like for you to look the part. My hairdresser and my makeup artist is just finishing up, and we'll carry on with this discussion. Yeah, the movie. What was the movie? FX with Brian Dennehy.
Yeah.
That was a special effects movie where they hired a special effects guy to do into the movie, and it all backfires on him. They put real bullets in the gun. They end up killing the actor, and he gets blamed for it, and he uses his special effects to elude the police and the mafia that are after him. But Gregory Fleeman told me all about the ins and outs of that movie, so I knew about it. It was etched in my brain while I was there, falling asleep in a state of being jet lagged. But I kind of retained everything he was telling me, and I remembered it when I watched the movie and when it was released in Key West a year later or whenever it was.
That's awesome. So you went down to Key West and were performing, and that was going well? You were having a good time?
It rained the first day I got there. It was pouring with rain, and I didn't have any money. And there was a guitarist under shelter, and I went up to him, and I had all my gear, and obviously, I was a performer. He said, "You here to perform?" I said, "Yeah, I'm from England." And I said, "I'm a bit disheartened with this weather." He said, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's going to be dry in about 10 minutes." And it was. It was a monsoon rain. It was peltering down, and then it dried in 10 minutes, and it was completely dry everywhere. And then tens of thousands of people come out. And I made like $200, $300 that night, and I'm thinking, this is heaven for me. I'm staying here for a long time. And each night I made good money. And it was before all the rules and regulations come in. And it was good for me. I fitted in there. And I stayed in Key West for about 6 months. And then my friend Bertie McLean, told me that the Ringling Brothers clown told me that they go to Boston in the summers. You can't stay in Key West in the summer, it's too hot. So we go to Boston up north when the weather breaks, and that is where I went. I moved between Boston and Key West for about 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Is that when did you start developing and honing the cups and balls routine?
That year.
That year?
Yeah. It was Johnny Fox that took me to see Danny Doo. Danny Doo was still living in Arizona. He was still alive, and I went to do a festival with Johnny Fox, and it was Mill Avenue Fair in Tempe, and then I think Phoenix was Tempe was 4th Avenue and Phoenix was Mill Avenue, one of the two, I can't remember. And there was a festival in the fall. Johnny told me to come out, hang with him, and he took me to see Danny Doo, and I bought a set of Paul Fox cups off Danny Doo that was made. Danny Doo had obtained the dyes to make the Paul Fox cups, which were the chick cups. They were bigger cups. And that's when I realised that the cups now has become more of a stand-up trick, more of a platform for a bigger crowd. And that's when my money started going up, because I developed a routine with the hat load, the melon load, I kind of based it on Cellini. Cellini used to produce a melon. And I remember reading a pamphlet when I was a kid about a street performer spinning a coin. This is just from a reporter's write-up in a newspaper article, that he said a performer shows up in town, has a little table, spins a coin on the table, puts his hat over the coin and asks the gentleman, is it heads or tails? This is exactly as I read it when I was very young, and I based my hat load on that, you know. And the onlooker would say it's heads, and the performer would put his hand under the hat. If it was head, he would turn it to tails. If it was tails, he would just lift his hat and say, no, it's tails. We'd do it again, see if you can guess it. You can win the penny. And he spins the coin on the table, takes his hat off, puts it on the table as the coin's spinning, and said, is it heads or tails? He said, if you can guess right, you win the penny. And the person said, it's heads. And he would lift up the hat and it would be tails. He said, let's try it one more time last time. And he would spin the coin and he said, is it heads or tails? And the guy said, tails. And the guy would put his hand under his hat and pretend to make the motion of stealing the coin and putting it in his pocket. Mm-hmm. And he would lift, and then he said, I'll lift the hat and the penny would be gone. Would that be a good trick? He said, you just took it and put it in your pocket. And he said, no, I didn't. He lifted his hat to show the penny was still on the table, misdirection, and then he would load a guinea pig under the hat. And then put that on the table, pick up the coin, give the guy the penny, and said, but you might want to donate that and maybe a few more shillings into my hat if I show you this. Lift his hat, revealing the guinea pig. And that is exactly as the reporter described it. Mm-hmm. And I understood it from very young, spinning the coin, strong misdirection, pretending to take the coin out, and that's misdirection.
Yeah.
I understood it, and that is what I based my melon hat load on. But it was Jim Cellini, an old friend that used to perform, and end up taking a bow, loading a grapefruit under his hat, and then producing the grapefruit from his hand like that, and then putting the grapefruit on the table. Mm-hmm. But I thought that's a good way to end, you know, with a big load, and I thought, well, I'll do it this way. I'll incorporate it into the routine of the cups and balls, and that is what everyone bought or stole. Most of them stole it.
Yep.
I have a list of people that bought the routine, you know, but most of them stole it.
Yeah, I stole it.
Did you?
I did. I tried to make up for it though by buying a pouch and the cups.
You made up for it.
Thank you.
Elliott, you're very honourable.
Thank you. I didn't know where to buy it at the time, and I had a PDF of. As a matter of fact, I had a PDF of the book, and I just stumbled upon the book, and I'm about to buy it.
Right.
So, the money won't go to you, but
no. Well,
I'll feel better. Well,
Penguin actually bought the rights to the routine and all the rights to my other stuff, but we had a 5-year deal, and now I'm sort of away from Penguin to do other ventures, but I'm still loyal to Penguin because they've looked after me really well, more than any other company.
Great.
Despite what people think of that online company, they've been honourable to me, you know, and loyal, and I'm going to remain loyal to them.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay. I've been itching to ask about the meeting Walter Irving Scott and the deals and learning about that and from him.
Yeah, a lot of people have been itching for that.
If it's not something you want to talk about, we don't have to talk about it.
I'm willing to talk about it. You know, I've got nothing to hide from that. You know, that was a turning point in my life, and it was fascinating to meet him. The one they all talk about. Yep. It was like me and Elvis in it, you know, I suppose. But it was great. It was a good moment in my life, you know, and it fulfilled a lifelong ambition. I wanted to meet Walter Scott, not knowing if he was alive or anything like that. I just wanted to meet him, and I did. I found him, you know, found him living in a retirement. Actually, he was living on his home, in a home above an old lady. It was like 4 farmhouses together. No bus service, no shops, just a farm road. And there was 4 houses, up and down duplexes. And he was living on one of those houses with a spiral staircase leading up to his apartment on the 2nd floor. And I go up to see him, and it's a long room about as long as this. And in the back of the room was 2 louver doors like that, French window doors. And behind that was a card table. And I sat down and I did my deals for him, and I was quite proficient at performing the deals, not in the rhythm that he would be satisfied with, because it was a rhythm thing that I didn't understand, learning from the book.
Of course.
But he told me the correct method and the rhythm of performing and how to practice the right moves. That's what come into play with meeting him. It helped my deals. But he told me that be careful because they're cursed. You know, the system I developed, I got from my uncle, who was named Bill Smith. He said it's been given to me from him, but he was told that it come from somebody that sold their soul to the devil. So be careful, the work is cursed. And I ended up having a stroke 20 years ago. If I can attain it to that, I don't know, but I've come out somehow believing curse and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, it ruined me, and but it didn't ruin him. He remained with it till he was in his 90s, late 90s. I think he was about the same age as Vernon. He might have been a year older than Vernon. But what's ironic about the whole thing is everybody that said he didn't exist, all the write-ups, Bruce, what's his name? Bruce Simon. Bruce Simon? That he said he was a thief and a commoner and all this. And he outlived everyone. All the people that said he didn't exist, he outlived everyone. Literally outlived everyone.
Yeah.
He lived longer than most of them. They all went before him. Anyone that tried to challenge him,
Finding somebody that you mentioned you had kind of lived with him in your head.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And then sitting down.
Yeah, it was spectacular, because I think I'm one of the only ones, if not the only one, that ever really got to understand me and sit down and ask him his story. And I've got audio tapes of those meetings.
Oh wow!
Dave Britland has them in his collection. We hope to release them one day with me performing. I can't perform the deals, but I can instruct how to do it.
Yeah.
So that is a work that I would like to put out there one day.
Yeah.
Demonstrating and how to go about putting the deals together and what the effect can have on people.
Yeah.
It was designed purely for a cheating at cards, but it's when the thing is with Walter's work, the system is Cardini said that Walter Scott's work is 500 years ahead of Erdney's work, and people said that's preposterous. Yeah, that's idiotic to say something like that.
Yeah.
But it's already been over 100 years.
Yeah.
So it's not too far off.
That
statement, and I do believe it's the best system of card cheating ever that's been in existence. I really believe it. It's very strong, and it'd be great to release, the right way of performing it.
You saw the Phantom do it himself, I would imagine.
No, I didn't.
Oh,
He was too decrepit to perform anything. His hands were all arthritis-y, and but his knowledge was there. His head was still on his shoulders, and his knowledge and his insights, and he was repetitive with what he was talking about. It was very repetitive. As you can understand, he was 90 something. So, but I got him, at the best of him before he passed.
Yeah.
I took Steve Freeman down there. Percy Diaconis come with us. I took Johnny Fox down there. I took some guys from Boston. He didn't get a lot of visitors, but I did take a lot of people down there to visit him. So I wasn't the only one that saw him. He was a great human, and he was a gentleman. He was a pure gentleman in the sense he looked like a banker. You'd expect him to be what you'd expect a con man to look like, or a card cheat, but he was completely opposite. He was a music teacher. He had a music studio, and that was his living. He used to write and perform music, and his instrument of choice was a Hawaiian guitar. And he used to tell me he used to paint his face black and perform as an Hawaiian in the band, because you couldn't be a white guy performing it, but they used to make him paint his face black, darken his skin.
Sure.
Whatever, boot polish, whatever he used, I don't know. And he darkened his skin, and he was on stage with low light, and people thought he was Hawaiian. And his band was called Walter Irving Scott and the Cheetahs.
And the Cheetahs.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Amazing, yeah. And there's an old article that you can pull up. There was also an article that was surfaced We didn't put it in the book because we might have thought Walter Scott was too old. But ironically enough, there was an article in a newspaper, I believe it was in San Francisco, maybe, or California, Los Angeles, where Wyatt Earp, the famous outlaw / sheriff lawman, was arrested with a young fella by the name of Walter Scott, and they were arrested for scamming cattlemen and railroaders and cowboys of their hard-earned money. And in evidence, we have a deck of cards. In this deck of cards, they used pinpricks, slight bumps, to determine high and low cards.
So it's possible.
He would have been about 15 or 16.
Wow.
But if his uncle taught him that principle when he was very young, and he went across to California, who knows if it's the same guy? A lot of people don't think it was, but what's the chance of having a deck of cards and the guy being Walter Scott was? But my theory is there's two Walter Scotts.
Okay.
I have a theory of there's two Walter Scotts. And also there's another one. If you look in the John Scarn books, there's about 4 or 5 books that John Scarn put out. In one of those books, in the back, there's a photograph of an old man, older than John Scarn. And John Scarn was probably in his 40s at this time.
Okay.
And there was a guy twice as old as him, and he said, here is a photograph of John Scarn and his aide, Walter Scott.
So you think it's just like a
common name?
A common name.
Common name. I don't know. But John Scarn knew a Walter Scott that helped him in his writing of his books and his knowledge in the gambling world. It was a famous Walter Scott that helped him. He said he's a famous cheat that helped him.
So you don't think they're related? It's
no, they're not related. It's just there's been 3 Walter Scotts surfaced that are all associated with card cheating.
Yeah, see, I was hoping you were gonna say they're all related. It's like the Illuminati or something. That's what I was hoping for.
Yeah, well, that would be a good way to end it. But I don't know. I can't put it all together.
Yeah, sure.
What's the chance of having a Walter Scott that's associated with the art of fleecing the public?
I think the Wyatt Earp thing, that's reasonable.
Well, I don't know.
I think it could be. I don't know. I didn't know the man like you did, but I like to believe that maybe.
Well, we all assume. See, when he did when Walter did to perform the demonstration at Professor Quimby's house in 1929, or was it 1932? One of those times, 3 years between.
Yeah.
He when he did the demonstration, we assumed that he was in his 40s or 50s. But he was in his 20s, you see?
Yeah. So,
you have some idea in your head of when you see somebody like Cardini, when you see him perform, you don't know how old he is. He looked the same throughout his entire career.
Yeah.
When you see that good footage, is he 60 years old? Is he 50, 40 years old? You don't know.
Yeah.
You can't put an age on somebody,
Sure.
So you assume Walter Scott was in his 40s.
Yeah.
Because that's when you consider that he must have been at his prime.
Yeah, exactly.
But he was in his 20s.
Wow. Yeah.
28.
Wow. That's
and
awesome.
And what the type of work he was doing back then is just, it was baffling to people that witnessed it. Whether he switched decks or not. I can understand he could do the work. There's no doubt about it, because I could do the work.
Yeah.
But when you're in front of 5 or 6 magicians that want to see the work, and they've paid $100 each to see the work, to see the demonstration, which is 1929 is a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So they wanted to see what he could do. So obviously they switched decks, because when you cheat at cards, it takes you all night to get an edge. When you're in front of magicians, they want to see aces every hand. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if you don't put aces every hand, it gets tedious, and they get up and deplete. But with Walter's demonstration, they want to see what he can do. He did the deals, bottoms and seconds. He did a few mucks and stacking. He did all this stuff. But for the demonstration, they wanted to see it, so they switched decks. So I hear, I've been told, and he said he did it with a borrowed deck, but it was a switch deck.
Yeah.
purposely to just get to the demonstration, because that's all magicians want to see.
Sure.
You know, I understand it, you know, he understood it, but people watching it don't understand it. You can't, you know, what was philosophy was this, he said, you know, I can end up sitting down in the poker game, but how do you get invited back a week later? How do you get invited back for the rest of the year? You play each week, how do you keep getting invited back? If you keep ended with aces, you're not going to get invited back. Yeah. What's going on here?
Yeah.
You can't keep ending up with aces. 3 2s are stronger than 3 aces. I understand that.
Sure.
You know, 3 2s might get beat, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's tough for 3 aces to get beat unless you have a straight or a flush, you know. But 3 aces is a weak hand if you're amongst fast company.
Sure.
But if you end up with 3 2s, that's okay. You know, 3 2s is still the same as 3 aces in such respect.
Yeah.
If you deal yourself those winning hands all the time, you're not going to get invited back next week.
Sure.
That's the psychology of a card player. You need to remain in that game for years to come so you can fleece them slowly.
Slowly, every time.
You know, and that's what magicians don't understand. They want to see aces. They want to see aces. They want to see a raw flush. Yeah.
That stuff doesn't happen in the real world.
It doesn't happen in the real world. No.
Yeah. I'm so fascinated by this. I would love to see you and David put out those tapes and do the instruction.
One day. Yeah, we're going to do it one day, yeah. And I'm starting to make the pegs as well.
Yeah. Oh, glory.
Yeah. Starting to make them.
Awesome.
But how you apply them on your thumb and all that, so the knowledge is lost.
Of course,
I give away all that,
mm-hmm.
and the principle how to make the pegs, you know, which is, if the listeners don't understand, it's a blister. It's a way of marking cards in the game, and you feel it with your thumb or your finger, and you have it. It's like braille on cards.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
it's fascinating.
That was part of what was work.
Yeah, golly. And this isn't, I mean, this is by no means a technical, you know, give up the work podcast. Like I said, it's philosophical, anecdotal.
Yeah.
But I have to ask about the hesitation, you know, are you just practicing the rhythm? Are you slowing it down and then feeling and getting...
That's the thing, you know, with it's an interesting question you're asking, but what would give to me was the correct rhythm and the correct tone of practicing. The way you can practice the wrong move something, and it looks, you got the aces from a shuffled deck, but it looked unnatural doing it.
Yeah,
won't stand in a card game. But what work was all about was naturalness, and perfect harmony of the game and the procedure of the game. You had to fit into that procedure. So what taught me the right training technique, you know, and how to go about it, how to sit up with your shoulders square, etc. You know, when do you make the peak?
Yeah.
What's the timing of when you make the peak? All these things come into play with what was teaching me, and it was the correct way of practicing. Once you got that rhythm and understanding, knowledge and understanding, having the knowledge is one thing, but understanding it is another. Yeah. Knowledge and understanding, and then once you have obtained all those principles in card play, then you can go about performing and practicing the right way. But it's no good practicing the wrong moves.
Of course, absolutely. Yeah.
Waste of time.
Yeah, sure.
And not a lot of people are practicing the wrong moves. A classic example, what I'm going to get at, is a gentleman called Steve Forte. He's a legendary card man. Everyone knows him. But if you see his rhythm, it's in perfect harmony of casino procedure. Yeah. It's how they train you to... Casino operators shuffle the cards the same way, square up the same way. They do this perfectly the same way, purposely, because the industry train them to do this, so it suits the overhead camera. Yeah. And if it's anything irregular, the pit boss will come down and change the dealer, and then put that dealer in the room and say, why aren't you going through the reasonable procedure of the game? Yeah. We've trained you, carry on doing that, otherwise you're going to be turfed out. Sure. So it has to be in perfect harmony. So the eye in the sky understands it, they clear it, the pit boss doesn't get an ear call, and they carry on doing the demonstration. To understand that, you see Steve Forte work. and he does that procedure perfectly.
Yeah.
And that is why it's eluding a lot of magicians, because it's not something that we are familiar with.
Yeah.
If we were in the industry a lot, like Mr. Z, Mike Zapak, he's in the industry, he understands the procedure of the game, so he's practicing the correct way.
Sure.
And that's what, with Walter's demonstration, I will teach people with the DVDs to practice the right way, you know. And they'll get to the end result a lot quicker than they would if they didn't understand the harmony of it.
Of course, sure. That makes perfect sense.
Because that's what I want to release, you know.
Yeah, yeah. You want people to understand, not just have the knowledge.
Yeah. If I'm going to release it, I'm going to get paid for it. They're going to pay for it diligently, and it's going to, you know, cost them, but it's going to be worth their time and effort.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the price is there.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm just personally curious. He was a musician. He was a teacher. Did music and musicality play into his, you know, teaching you about sitting at the card table? I guess I'm asking for the tempo and the rhythm.
Yeah. Well, you know,
did he speak in those terms, or did he?
Ross Bertram, a Canadian magician, was a musician, and he used to have tempo and beats. Mm-hmm. As far as his music is concerned, he brought that into magic. And I never knew Ross Bertram, and I never met him, but I understand that he was fantastic. Everybody put him on a very high pedestal and said he was fantastic. But the stuff in his book looks like it's difficult, but they all tell me he could actually do all that stuff in his book. And he was a nice gentleman, but he was a musician, and he talked about beats, mm-hmm. you know, drumming beat. He talks about a saxophone beat or a clarinet beat. Sure. To incorporate that type of beat in practice and the magic. So it's not the first. You know, Walter Scott understood those beats, mm-hmm. and I don't understand those beats because I'm not a musician. Sure. But I understand the correct way to practice. Mm-hmm. I truthfully understand that. You know, it's very important that someone has to practice the right way.
Yeah.
But going back to streets allows you to practice the right way, because if you don't, you get caught. Mm-hmm. So you eliminate certain unnecessary moves. Yeah, so that's what streets does to you through attrition of performing over and over again the same routines 30 or 40 times a week.
It's tight and crisp.
It becomes tight and crisp, and you know your angles, you know your unsteady movements, you eliminate all these things, and then you become, if anything, a good performer. You can't become a bad performer when you're practicing the same moves and performing the same shows. You become good, mm-hmm. but there are a few people that still don't get it. They still are bad, you know?
Yes.
But for any novice out there wanting to become good, you will become good if you do the same routines over and over again. I'm talking
for real people.
For real people. Yeah, you can't practice the same routines on the same people, because they're gonna.
You're not learning it. You're not gaining anything.
Yeah. So, but I brought into that philosophy about what taught me into my street routines as well. Practice the right rhythm, you know, mm-hmm. and it's turned out to be very valuable for me. I understand it, and that's why I'm a huge fan of the greats like Bob Reed, mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Roy Benson, Al Goshman, Slidini. You know, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of Vernon and Charlie Miller and Larry Jennings and Marlowe. I'm a big fan of all that stuff. But if I was ever to go to a convention and they were all living, the first room I would go in would be Slidini's or Al Goshman, and Vernon and Larry Jennings would probably be not on my repertoire. I would not be interested in going in to see them. Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
Because what they did and performed it doesn't take my interest,
mm-hmm.
although it's technically proficient and it's fantastic stuff, but not for lay people. You know, a room full of magicians, you hire a big name to get people to come see them, would be Vernon or Larry Jennings, although Larry would never go to a convention. He did a few before he passed, but they're not on my list of people I would want to see. On my list would be Mellini, you know, Roy Benson, mm-hmm. Albert Goshman, Juan Tamarez, you know.
Sure.
You understand?
Yes,
Slidini,
absolutely.
Yeah, these people, and the greatest of them all was Bob Reed. Technically he wasn't the best, but boy, he had rhythm. Mm-hmm. If you want to find out somebody that had rhythm, study that man's work. Then you'll understand what I'm getting at. Yeah. that's what it's all about, is rhythm. And that's what Walter Scott and Ross Bertram talked about, rhythm, practicing techniques.
Mm-hmm.
And Fred Capps, another one who had rhythm, but he was also a fantastic entertainer. He understand facial expressions, he understand timing, stance, how to dress. You know, he understands, you know, how to steal loads and sleeving techniques and top-it techniques. He understands all these things, and he put all those things into his act, and that is why it fooled people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's to me, it's a lost art, all that stuff. Because you can't get that stuff from the internet today. You can't understand pocket management and how to dress properly and all this. It's a lost art, you know. It's a shame because, you know, they're not teaching this stuff on a DVD you buy for $20. You're getting a Aikido box routine, and you know what I'm saying. Yeah. It's just
well, it's the art of being a fully fledged performer. It's not just about doing a trick and calling yourself a magician. It's about every moment that you're in front of these people is, you know, they're taking in information and they're experiencing whatever you're doing, and it's about Capps is probably, in my mind, one of the best exponents of what you're talking about.
Well, I disagree. I think Roy Benson was. I think Roy Benson is on a very much higher echelon than Capps.
Sure.
You know, but Capps is nothing taken away from him. He was fantastic.
Yeah.
But in as far as the top people, it would be Roy Benson. And I believe Capps molded his style on Roy Benson. If you see Capps' style and Roy Benson's style, there's a lot of similarities. But Roy Benson was a vaudeville performer, you see. He performed all the time in front of lay people. And Capps was great. I don't know if Capps performed a lot for lay people. I don't know that. He may have done. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But I know he was a successful performer at conventions, and they lined him up, and people flocked to go see him work. I met Capps in Southampton Row, Cheney Mews, outside the old Magic Circle. I watched him and Fred Robinson go back to back on the top change when I was about 14 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great. And he was great. Fred Capps was great.
That's
but
awesome.
One of my idols is one of the greatest ever, and I don't know nothing about him, but I can tell you right away just by reading his tricks and the tricks he put out. It's like the Black Bag is Mellini. I think he was the most underrated performer. Maybe not underrated today because he's a legend, but what I mean is there's not much out there about him. His card stab, his block of ice from under the hat and stuff like this. And Johnny Thompson's got some great stories, but they are from Charlie Miller's. Come from Charlie Miller, the information, because I think Charlie Miller obtained all the notes, etc. from, I don't know, I'm guessing through Eddie Maguire, who was the guy that wrote Phantoms at the Card Table, and Eddie Maguire was Mellini's manager for a few years. And I think Eddie Maguire and Charlie Miller were quite close, and I think that's where he obtained all the Mellini stuff. I guess, I don't know.
That seems like a reasonable...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that's how the egg bag come about, because Charlie Miller gave it to Ken Brook, and Ken Brook decided to publish his version of what he had read from the Charlie Miller notes that come from Mellini, and Ken Brook tried his best to describe it in words in a pamphlet form, but it's very difficult to describe the maneuver of the egg bag. It needs to be basically constructed on a DVD, but knowing it, again, knowledge and understanding,
Sure.
Yeah. That's the difference, and I just wish people like Albert Goshman and Mellini and Roy Benson, if you could just break down their acts today and find out why they sleeved it, why they used a magnet to ditch it, and why they used a pull for that piece, and all these things, it's just fascinating to me, and it's lost and it's disappearing. So, and the magic world is changing in many ways, but I just wish I had resources to go back and study under those people,
Sure.
I asked a room full of I just did a lecture tour and I put my hand up. This is interesting. In the 30 odd lectures I did about 28 lectures across the country. There was 3 teenagers total in all those clubs put together. One was about 11, one was about 14, the other one was about 16. Teenagers, 3 of them. That's amazing to me, because who's carrying on the clubs?
Yeah.
Who's going to carry on the new magic world?
Well, I think that's a serious issue, but the kids aren't going to the clubs because they're not made to feel well.
No, they're not. They're going
online.
on the internet.
Yeah.
But that's not the only reason. The kids would go to the clubs if they were teaching them magic and they were getting together and having sessions of magic. They would go to the clubs. But these old fuddy-duddies are stood there talking about politics and bills and like club issues, political bullshit. And who wants to listen to that? Kids want to do magic, so they're not going to the clubs. So the clubs have got themselves to blame. The old men in the dark are blaming the internet. Get with it, just like get a fucking cell phone, dude.
Yeah.
Stop blaming the internet. Get a cell phone, learn how to use it. Then you'll understand what the internet's all about.
Yeah.
You can't blame, there's people blaming the diminish of brick and mortar shops. But I've had problems with people in Massachusetts who had brick and mortar shops. They didn't like the pros come in to hang out because they never bought anything. But that's what brick and mortar shops were all about. The pros would frequent these shops to get the gossip and share the gossip.
Yeah.
They would hang at these places. But I talk about a guy like Hank Lee. He would despise me going in because he said I never spent any money. But he's gone. His brick and mortar shops are gone. But brick and mortar shops were hangouts for magicians. But the owners of those brick and mortar shops said, we don't want you coming here. We don't want you playing chess or reading the books. We want you to buy something. If you don't want to buy something, get out. Basically, that's what they said in so many words.
Yeah.
And I've been told that many times. But now they're all gone, and so people are hanging out on the internet,
Yeah.
So they got themselves to blame, But again, it's the same thing of the clubs talking about politics, where they should be doing magic to these kids. And the first thing I do when I get to a lecture hall, if there's 30 people in the room, I say, who's the president? The guy will put his hand up, and I said, come up here, please. Shuffle the deck. And I go and sit in his seat. And he says, what do you want? I say, shuffle the deck. I want you to shuffle. And believe me, they're all dropping them. They can't even do an overhand shuffle.
Yeah. And
these guys, the presidents, are deciding what kids can come in, and they judge those kids to come in the club. And it's so wrong, and this guy can't even fucking shuffle a deck of cards, and he's judging that 15-year-old kid that wants to become a member of the club. You have to be able to do this trick, this trick, this trick. You have to be able to make a coin vanish. This
priorities aren't in the right spot.
It's completely back to front, yeah. So I ripped the guy apart. I said, I can't believe you can't even shuffle a deck of cards. Unbelievable. And he's totally embarrassed, and he's gone beetroot red because he knows, can't even shuffle cards. And he's the president of the club. Knob.
Yeah.
That's what's wrong.
Yeah.
It's wrong about that. And so those kids are not coming. They're going to the internet, and the internet's I'm a big fan of it.
Sure.
I really am. It's not changing my living.
Yeah.
It's not changing my aspect of how I see magic. It's helping magic, I believe. TV exposure on, all the shows that are coming out, all the people winning. America's Got Talent and England's Got Talent. It's magic's on an all-time high, and if it remains like that, it's be great for everyone. Everyone complained about the masked magician. All these old fuddy-duddies, the president of the club saying he exposed this and he exposed that. So what the fuck if they told him there's a little gap in one of the rings and that's how they link them? Who gives a shit? You think people stop doing the linking rings because there's a gap in there? It's like you go in turn on the TV, the Turner Network, and there's a guy in his garage teaching you how to change the carburetor on a Mini, and a Mini Cooper S in England. They teach you how to change the twin carburetors. And you get this wrench and you do this and you twist that, you open that valve, you do all these things, but you can't remember what he's done, can you? You can't change a carburetor on a Mini in your garage.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't do it. So the same with the gap in the linking ring, and there's two linked together.
It's someone who wants to learn to do it, who puts in the time, and then you're a magician and you have the right to know. Yeah.
It's not hindering me. So the masked magician was hated, rightly so, but he's hated with a couple of $100,000 in his pocket. But he was hated, but he didn't interfere with my pocketbook. He didn't interfere with how I do my shows. Hasn't interfered with me, not whatsoever. They hated Penn and Teller when they come out and perform the cups and balls with clear cups, not understanding why they did it. Didn't understand it. They just decided to hate them throughout the whole world when they first produced that routine on TV or in the theatre or wherever they performed it. They say Penn and Teller's doing it. There's a couple of guys, a couple of buffoons doing it in New York with some clear plastic cups. That's what they won't do. That's not going to happen. We'll boo them. We'll get them out of the fraternity. We'll blacklist them everywhere. They're the greatest things that ever happened to Magic, Penn and Teller.
Yeah.
How long did it take Amazing Jonathan to perform at the Castle? It took him like 3 decades for them to finally say, Jonathan, come and do your show here. The guy's a fucking genius. I mean, he's like, and they ban him from the Castle because they say he's derogatory against women and he treats women like shit. The woman was a paid actress. Mm-hmm. You don't ban Tom Cruise for fighting his villain in one of the secret agent movies, and he beat the shit because he's trying to kill Tom Cruise. Yeah. You don't bang Tom Cruise because he beat the shit out of this other actor. Yeah. They're actors. Sandra was an actress in Jonathan's show, and he's dragging her hair, stapling her eyes to the card to the eyes, and taping her hair, and it's just a show. And there's funny duddies in the Castle saying, "Oh, we never have him here," no way. But it was a show, and the guy's brilliant. He's a fantastic guy.
Oh yeah,
great comedian, and they finally had him in the Castle, and it's all forgiven. It's like 30 years to do that. Give me a break. Give me a break. That's the guys that can't shuffle the cards.
Yep.
They're at the top. No idea. Anyway, we live most of them. We live longer than most of them, won't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we don't have hate flowing through our veins.
Yeah, it's a shame. But Magic's on all-time high, and I'm really proud to be part of it.
Yeah, I attribute a lot of the resurgence of Magic in television in the last couple of years to Penn and Teller and their show when it started in Britain. Fool Us,
yeah. Then, great concept, great shows. Give a lot of people a great exposure that wouldn't get exposure anywhere else, Mm-hmm. And the idea is not really to fool Penn and Teller. What people don't understand, the idea is to get exposure on TV that you wouldn't get. When I did Penn and Teller, they were all telling me that I was out of place and how would I fall in with the cups and balls. But I got asked to do that routine on that show. Mm-hmm. I didn't go on there willingly. They asked me. It was Johnny Thompson that asked me to come on the show and perform the cups and balls. That is why I was on there.
Yeah.
And I took advantage of it because I get exposure.
Sure.
All these old fuckers, sat there can't get a hard on, give me a write-up saying you've no place in Penn and Teller because you can't fool them,
Most people couldn't fool Penn and Teller, first of all.
No, there are a few that...
There are, yeah, sure.
But it's not about that.
That's not the point at all.
It's not really about that. It's just an entertaining show all round. Mm. And it's a great show. And Penn, argumentatively, can be very opinionated. And that's his style. But he's come across as being one of the nicest guys that's ever been on TV. He's got great things to say about each and every one that's been on that show, and they come across as really cool people, and everyone loves that show, and it's because of Penn and Teller and also Jonathan Ross that's carrying the show.
Sure.
And it's a great concept, and there's room for it in Magic. It's great. It's really a good show.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'd be willing to go on it again, and I would fall them bad. I've fallen with my new routine, right, Elliott?
Absolutely. In a heartbeat.
Yeah, in a heartbeat. I'd fall them bad. Yeah, it's a great show. I'm really happy with it.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about... I'm just curious if you want to talk about your egg bag. And not even the trick, not even the routine, just how you think about the egg bag and how it should be, the black bag. Did we talk about that earlier?
We talked a little bit about it.
I don't remember if we were recording, though. were we?
I don't know. I can't remember.
I don't know.
But this is explain to the readers, the listeners. This is the second session. We're at Dave.
We're at Dave Buck's condo,
Yeah.
and we were recording at the castle about, I don't know, 4 hours ago.
But I had to get kicked out to start a lunchtime show, and we didn't finish the segment, so we're down here at Dave Buck's.
Condo.
You know, the twins.
Yeah.
They're not talking to each other because he forgot his birthday. The brother forgot his brother's birthday.
Terrible, just terrible. You can't imagine the tension in the house. So anyway, I don't remember if we talked about it already, but I want to talk about it again. Just so it goes back to what has kind of been a through line through the whole discussion is the idea that you perform for real people, and so you don't come out and say, "I'm going to show you the egg bag."
No, you don't come out and say, "Ladies and gentlemen, here's the egg bag," because that's what magicians have adopted that title and call it the egg bag. But I'm on a campaign to call it the black bag, because you can't come out and say to somebody who wants to see the color changing deck routine, like, duh.
Yeah.
So I don't call it the egg bag. I'm trying to call it the black bag, and I wish everybody would call it the black bag. So I'm selling a DVD called The Black Bag, and it's how I perform the egg bag routine. But I perform it primarily for lay people, although there are magicians this week at the castle, and I'm fooling them really bad with it, because I've designed it purposely with, again, a rhythm thing, and that is what magicians cannot work out, the rhythm thing. A classic example of the rhythm thing is Hans Fitch. Is it the guy that does all that?
Hans. Yeah, you were right. Hans Fitch.
Yeah, massively big fan of his. I didn't like it when I first see it. It was too busy, but I've become a big fan. That's called a rhythm performance. It's a package thing that he's doing, or the thing rhythm and bouncing and you know, that's what he's not really doing tricks. He's not lapping. He's doing all those things, but it's the rhythm that you can't follow. Sure. You see, same with my black bag routine. It's a rhythm thing, and that's why I'm fooling magicians, because it's not in textbooks. You see what I mean? It's not something you can read about.
I was fooled badly. Several times during that routine. Yeah.
Everyone is. Yeah. And that's just the part of it. I got much more to it. You know, I got much more added to it. You know, I'm quite proud of it. It's a nice routine. But you know, like I said earlier, the people that didn't understand that egg bag, the black bag, was Marlowe, Vernon, Larry Jennings. They didn't understand it, and they go, "I don't get it. I don't understand it." They even wrote that in some of the magazines, you know. Even Marlowe told me, and I said, "You ever perform with other apparatus other than cards?" He said, "No." I said, "Never the black egg bag?" And he said, "No, that's a horrible trick." And I'm like, "What? How could you say that? It's the greatest trick in the world." And but the people that said it was a great trick was Roy Benson, Bob Reed, Bob Sheets, Tom Sini, Ken Brook, Charlie Miller. These people, Malini, of course, fits in that category. These 7 people that I mentioned are all entertainers with a deck of cards, with those props. Sure. Okay, but when you got the people that didn't understand it, was Marlowe, Vernon, Larry Jennings. They didn't understand it. They said it's the worst apparatus that you could ever purchase. But they weren't performers with those. If you try and perform those tricks that they described in the books and told you what tricks they would perform at a convention, understandably, yes, that's great for a convention. But you do those tricks for lay people, the lay people will just tap you on the shoulder and say, "Good job, next." Right? Yeah. But the people that would just go out with their eyes watering and thoroughly enjoy themselves and their bellies are hurting would be people like Bob Reed and Al Goshman, Roy Benson. You see what I mean? These people were entertainers with those props. They understood what the egg bag was all about. They understood about 600p. They understood about Chinese sticks. You wouldn't see them doing ace assemblies because it just doesn't work. Yeah.
Is it the audience interaction? Is it the just the comedic timing and rhythm?
No, it's a rhythm thing. It's all about a rhythm thing. Watch Roy Benson work. Watch who could I say? Bob Reed. Watch these guys work. You know, you can't get footage of Mulaney, unfortunately, but watch all these guys, the way they perform the rhythm with what they're doing, whether it's 6-card repeat, Chinese sticks, Miser's Dream. You watch these guys, and then you'll thoroughly understand. Mm-hmm. And you watch the performer that I mentioned also is Marlowe and Vernon and Larry Jennings. You watch those guys perform, it's just nothing, flat. Great tricks for a convention.
Yep.
But you put a lay people in front of them. But you know, you say, well, Vernon performed the cups and balls, but but it was Mulaney's routine that he took. He just adapted it to suit his style of working. But the rhythm of the cups and balls was Mulaney's. Mulaney, and that rhythm has been going for centuries. That style of working, you know, it hasn't changed, but the way they performed it, Vernon took it and published it. But look at Vernon's Symphony of the Rings. It's not Vernon's, it's Cardini's. When Cardini decided to retire from his stand-up manipulation act, because of reasons I don't want to disclose right now.
Sure.
But he blamed other magicians stealing his stuff, and maybe they were working cheaper than him because he was a high-priced variety entertainer.
Yeah, of course.
And people were doing it for half the price, and they were coming out the woodwork, all copying Cardini with the monocle and the snare and the tipsy waddle on stage and all this, etc., etc. He blamed them that they were doing it cheaper, but that's not the reason. There's another reason that'll come out later on. But when Cardini would come out and perform, I've lost my train of thought. Where was I going?
Vernon's Symphony of the Rings was Cardini's.
Yeah, Symphony of the Rings. Cardini was working on a routine of the Symphony of the Rings, what we see today, and it was a routine that everyone does, but it was definitely Cardini's, because Cardini, if you think of that routine, it's from a performer's point of view. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
All these flourishes and the globe and the rose opening up. It's all performers. Vernon was never a performer, so how would he come up with all that stuff?
Sure.
Stole it. And I have proof.
I believe you.
Yeah. Swan Cardini told me that Vernon had come round to stay with Richard Pitchford, who was Cardini's real name, in Blackhawk Trail where they lived, and they had a trailer that they would put akin to the house, and they would knock one wall of the house down and bring the trailer up, which give it an extension, and they would sleep in there. It's like an extra bedroom, and they would have latches and lock the trailer, securing it to the house. And when they would go on tour, they would put doors up on that segment of the hall in the house, and then unhitch the trailer and take it on the road to their conventions and gigs, etc. Vernon come and stayed in there, and then in the middle of the night, Carol Cardini, she lives in Bakersfield, she'll even tell you the story herself. She woke up her dad and mum and said, "Mummy and Daddy, I can't sleep because the light's on." And Richard turned around and said, "Well, I turned the light off." She said, "No, there's a man in there in the study." Richard gets up, looks in there, and Vernon's taking all his notes. And that's when they told him to get out of the house. And then months later, Symphony of the Rings was published.
Wow.
And Cardini turned his back on the fraternity and said, "I've had enough. No one's coming here." And that's why Swan was very adamant in meeting anybody. But she took to me, and I actually stayed in that little trailer. And I went down in the basement. I saw all the German lathes, the watchmaking lathes.
Wow.
And all of the Cardini paraphernalia of all the billboards and stuff, which I believe Bill Kalush has got a lot of it now for his collection, which is great. It's in good hands.
Yeah.
But I went through all that many years before anybody did, purposely to search for information about Walter Scott, because Walter Scott and Richard Pitchford were good friends.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So Cardini, Richard Pitchford. And that's how it come about, and that's how I got the story of Swan telling me these stories about Walter Scott, Eddie Maguire, and Cardini, and her, and I've got all that on audio tape, which is part of the Walter Scott talkings sessions. I've interviewed Tony Cardero, who was a Cardini wannabe, he told me about, he felt bad throughout his career ripping off Cardini, you know, in the monocle and the evening suit and doing the pipe gag and the big cigar. He felt bad about doing all that, but he felt that was the norm back then to steal. So people have been stealing stuff their entire life. He said he could never sleep good. You know, he told me, he said, I've never been able to sleep good knowing that I made a career out of somebody else's act. I taken someone else's persona, the timing of his jokes, the timing of his pantomimes, his dress, his style, and even how he carried himself of an evening. You know, he said, I've never slept properly because of it, living with that. So if people can sleep properly stealing my gear, good luck to you. You know, I sleep good at night. I've never stolen anything in my life. So, yeah, there's a lot to be said.
Yeah. I'm very much looking forward to the Walter Scott sessions.
I think everyone is. I can't wait to get it out there. It needs to be put out.
Yeah. You don't have a time frame for it or anything? Next 5-10 years?
This when David Britland wants to put it out, because I actually give everything to David Britland as a reward for helping me write the book. Because I couldn't write the book myself. He did a painstaking job. He did a great job. Yeah. And so I rewarded him with all the Walter Scott photographs, signed books. I got the original book that I got in 1969, the little spiral-bound book. Yeah.
Was that the Gambler's
book?
Gambler's
Club?
1969.
Gambler's book, spiral-bound, Phantom at the card table, the original one. I don't know if it's the original, but it is one of the first ones I had.
Is it like one of the small ones? Like,
it's about so big.
I have one of those.
Yeah, spiral-bound.
Yeah.
1969. Yeah, it's collectors. Well, it's not a collector's. The original manuscript is a collector's.
Sure, yeah.
You know, but I just sat with a guy called Arnaud. He's a French guy, and he's fantastic. He's a friend of Steve's. He's a friend of mine now, and I sat with him for about 4 hours the other day in Vegas. We went out for lunch. He does some fantastic stuff with a deck of playing cards, unbelievable. And we went through some stories and swapped ideas about the gambling table. But he showed me some photographs of his collection, what he has, notes about Walter Scott that was written by Eddie Maguire.
Wow.
Actually, the pamphlet had come about because when people paid $100 for the demonstration back in 1938, 1928, 1929, 1930, 31, 32, but in that era.
Sure.
I forget exactly when it was. He did a demonstration of card handling, and he charged people $100 to come and witness it, which was a lot of money back then.
Eddie did? Eddie charged?
Did. He charged people $100, and there was 5 or 6 guys that would come in to witness it. And I think it was Max Holden's house or Professor Quimby's house, one of the two. I'm not really sure. Accurately, I'm not sure. But afterwards, they willingly paid the $100, but a lot of them were reluctant. They said, we want something for it. So that is when Eddie Maguire typed up a manuscript of Walter's work. Walter said he never given permission to do this, but because Eddie Maguire wanted to do more demonstrations, he felt he would type up the manuscript so you can see the demonstration for $100, but here's a manuscript to go with it. So that manuscript circulated to sort of top card men, and it was copied and etc. And that's what we have today at Gamblers Book Club.
Sure.
Walter Scott said he didn't want it out there because they accused him of being a card cheat, and that's putting somebody on a pedestal that you don't want to be.
Yeah.
You know, he was associated in New England and Rhode Island and New York amongst prominent businessmen because he would perform in their houses playing music. They didn't want him calling him a card cheat, and that is what he was labelled.
It was tarnishing his
reputation.
Yeah.
And he fell out with Eddie Maguire over it. And so in turn, in the last 80 years, that manuscript has been circulated all over. And that is when Howie of Gamblers Book Club got hold of one, Howie Schwartzman, got hold of the original manuscript and decided it was in public domain to publish it in a book form. And that's what we have today. And that's what the book I got when I was 9 years old, that my grandfather would give me. And that's what I was reading, the same one you're reading today. But I was 9 years old.
Yeah.
I couldn't read it. It was something you don't give a 9-year-old boy.
No, of course,
but it was just a magic book as far as my grandfather was concerned.
Yeah.
He didn't bother reading it. It's not his thing, you know. But my sister read it for me, and I read in the back pages about what they were saying about Walter Scott. You know, uncanny, supernatural, you know.
A phantom, yeah.
A phantom, apparition, yeah. Great, exciting. They said he didn't exist. They said he was made up because Eddie Maguire wanted to boast about that he found this will-o'-the-wisp of a card expert and he was the greatest in the world, and they said Vernon was the best, but everyone's saying this guy's the best, and it was purposely designed so they could say, bring him here. And Vernon would keep going up to Eddie Maguire saying, where's this phantom? And then he would say, well, let's talk about this other thing first. And that's how they got to know each other. Mm-hmm. They said it was designed purposely to get to know Vernon, but the guy did exist and he was real, and I found him. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's reasonable that Eddie used Walter to get close to.
Walter said he used him. Yeah. He fell out with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm very excited. I actually read your book before I got the Gamblers Book Club copy.
Right. Where'd you get the Gamblers Book Club copy?
I got it at MagicCon. Andy Greggett brought all of his books.
Yeah. He's got some great stuff. Yeah.
Great stuff. And I was just flipping through. It had been like maybe a year since I'd read your book. I was just flipping through, and it caught my eye, and I pulled it out. And
blue spiral bound,
a little bitty white. It was old, yellowed, and
it's not complete though. The 1972 version has got more added to it.
Oh, okay. I may have the 72 version.
Might be 72,
but it's still old blue spiral bound.
Yeah,
it's But yeah, I pulled it out, and it was like $15, and I was like, this,
well worth it.
This is mine now.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Absolutely. I loved your book. I recommend it constantly to people that are like, oh,
you can't get it no more.
Well,
unfortunately, I just buying them back every time I see one. I buy it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm buying them back. I've got 4 or 5 complete copies of my own, which I will sell later on. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they're collector's items. I'm talking about the hardback one.
Yeah.
Although we sold the rights to an American publishing company and we never been paid for that, they bought the rights to publish the softback version called Card Sharks. I think something like that, or it's a different title from Phantoms because they couldn't use Phantoms because they didn't pay us for the rights.
I have a softbound Phantoms.
Yeah, what's it called? It's called
It's called Phantoms of the Card Table.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it the green one? The green softback one? That come from England?
I don't think so.
There's an American one called Card Sharks, I think. It's the same book.
Yeah.
I believe, yeah.
I don't know. I'll have to. It's at home in Louisiana. I'll have to take a look at it. I'll shoot you an email about it.
I think you'll find it. It's called Card Sharks or something different from Phantoms at the Card Table on the front cover.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it says but I may have the
Confessions of a Card Cheat. It's called, I think. Confessions of a Card Hustler, something like that.
I don't think.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Anyway,
it doesn't matter.
I might be wrong. It doesn't matter.
I haven't paid for it. Screw them.
I have a legit copy. I think, hopefully. But anyway, yeah, I still recommend it to people, even if they buy it secondhand or find it, from Andy or something.
It's a good read.
It is a good read. You did a good job on it, and I think it's a treasure. I look forward to the ensuing DVDs.
Yeah.
Let me see. Let me take a look at the notes. Oh, I want to start asking in these podcasts just some interesting little rapid fire questions near the end, because we've been doing this about another hour, and I think that's a good length. When was the last time that you were really fooled hard? When you just you had that guttural whoa, what just happened reaction?
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't happen very often.
No, I wouldn't imagine so.
Fooled really hard.
And it doesn't have to be the last time. Maybe your favorite time that you were.
Okay, I would honestly say Mickey Silver.
Okay.
He fooled me really bad with his coin vanish. Okay. I mean, extremely bad, live, sitting right there.
Yeah.
And then he took me back to his home one day, and he did a stack of poker chips, switched them, red ones to black ones like this. They were a big stack. and it fooled me, like
Wow.
brainstormed me. It was unbelievable.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's the only time I've been really blown away. Mickey Silver, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. I look forward to piecing together the 2 parts of it.
Yeah, good luck.
It'll release in probably February.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
look forward to listening to it. No, I
And-
won't listen to it.
Well, I'll shoot you a copy of it after it's edited and finished so that you can listen to it if you want
Yeah.
to, if there's
Yeah.
anything you want to take out or
Sure.
change. But I think
Been
you're...
good. Thanks. I hope you get something out of it.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.